The Galactic Academy of Advanced Studies occupied 17 interconnected biodomes on Nexus Station, each environment carefully calibrated for the 47 member species of the cooperative. Dome 7 housed the Life Sciences Wing, where the air was kept at a compromised temperature that satisfied absolutely no one. Marcus Webb sat in the back row of Xenobiology 301, trying to make himself small. This never worked. He was human, which meant he was either adorable or terrifying depending on who you asked, and definitely noticeable. Mr. Webb. Professor Shithara's 3 eye stalks swiveled in his direction. The Calverine professor was shaped like a tube sock filled with cottage cheese. If that tube sock held 2 PhDs and a temperament like expired milk. Please explain the evolutionary pressure that produces bioluminescence in deep-sea environments. Predation and mate selection mostly, Marcus said. The light helps you find food or other stuff in the dark. Other stuff. Sithara's speaking orifice fluttered with what might have been amusement. How wonderfully vague. Yes, bioluminescence serves multiple purposes, as Mr. Webb so eloquently. A chittering sound interrupted her. That was Pip, a Ressi, who looked like a ferret made of anxiety and silver fur. Pip chittered at everything. Lectures, lunch breaks, particularly aggressive dust motes. To Marcus's left sat Vorn, a Hectarian whose species resembled upright beetles with too many meditation apps. Vorn was currently humming, which he did when stressed. The humming sounded like a refrigerator having an existential crisis. As I was saying, Shithara continued, bioluminescence represents a fascinating example of convergent evolution. The door hissed open. Everyone turned. In academic settings, late arrivals were scandalous. In this academic setting, where half the students came from prey species with a fight-or-flight response heavily weighted toward flight, any unexpected noise was cause for cardiac events. Shithara's eye stalks bent toward the door. Ah, yes. Class, we have a new transfer student joining us today. Please make them welcome. Nothing walked through the door. The door hissed shut. Shithara's eye stalks drooped. I was assured they would arrive during the second period break, not during active instruction. How inconvenient. Marcus returned to his notes. He'd learned that inconvenient was professor speak for anything from mild scheduling conflict to incoming apocalypse. Context was everything. The next 20 minutes passed normally, which meant Pip chittered, Vorn hummed, and Marcus took notes while trying not to think about the fact that his dorm shower was still broken, and he'd been washing his hair in the gym sinks like some kind of medieval peasant. Then the door opened again. This time something walked through. Marcus looked up and thought, oh no. The creature in the doorway stood 7 feet tall on digitigrade legs, covered in scales that shifted between charcoal and deep purple. Its head was triangular, filled with teeth that belonged in a nightmare's nightmare. 4 eyes, 2 primary and 2 smaller ones set on the sides of its skull, scanned the room with the intensity of an industrial scanner looking for structural weaknesses. This was a Vrathkul, an apex predator from Krev Prime, a planet where the herbivores evolved armor plating and the predators evolved better teeth. Pip immediately fainted, just straight up collapsed like a puppet with cut strings. Vorn stopped humming. This was somehow more terrifying than the humming. Ah, Sithara said, with the tone of someone watching their retirement plans catch fire. Yes, this is Krieg. He comes to us from the military academy seeking to broaden his educational background. Krieg, please find a seat. Krieg didn't move toward a seat. Instead, he sniffed. Part 2. Enter the Apex Predator. The sniff was audible, a deep, deliberate inhalation that seemed to pull all the oxygen from the room. Marcus had read about Vrathkul dominance behavior. It was covered in Chapter 17 of Predator Social Dynamics, right after the section on how to not die in first contact situations. The sniff was part of their threat assessment protocol. They determined social hierarchy through scent, reading pheromones and chemical signatures the way humans read body language. Krieg moved into the classroom with the fluid grace of something that had never questioned its place at the top of the food chain. His tail, thick as Marcus's torso, swept behind him in a slow metronome of barely contained violence. The first student he approached was Selly, a Morian with butterfly wings and a personality like spun sugar. Sally did what any reasonable prey species would do when confronted with a creature that could bite her in half. She teleported, just vanished in a small pop of displaced air. "Sally, please return to class," Sithara said wearily. "Mr. Krieg is not going to eat you. It's against university policy." Krieg moved to the next student. Rix, a Thorvian who looked like a walking cactus, stood his ground. The Thorvians weren't prey animals, they were too toxic to eat, but that didn't make them predators either. Krieg sniffed him, made a huffing sound that might have been dismissal or acknowledgement, and moved on. Student by student, Krieg made his way through the classroom. Some species he barely acknowledged, others he sniffed extensively, circling them like a wine enthusiast examining a particularly complex vintage. When he reached Thrace, a Deltarian who'd been a little too smug about his species' military history, something interesting happened. Krieg sniffed him, then chuffed, a sound that translated roughly to moderately impressive but still food. Thrace turned a color that probably wasn't healthy for Deltarians. Marcus watched this procession with growing dread. He was in the back row. Krieg was working his way methodically through the room, which meant eventually, inevitably, those 4 eyes would focus on him, the human in the room, the representative of the species from Earth, a planet that should have been classified as a disaster zone rather than a nursery world. Earth, where the rain was sometimes acid, the wildlife was mostly venomous, and the dominant species decided to invent persistence hunting and then got bored and invented philosophy. Krieg reached Vorn. The Hectarian's humming had reached frequencies usually reserved for quantum mechanics. Krieg sniffed him, paused and made a curious sound, somewhere between a growl and a question mark. Then he moved to Marcus. Run from predators because that triggers their chase response. Of course, that advice came from Earth, where the predators had evolved alongside humans and had learned that humans were trouble. Krieg came from a planet where nothing evolved alongside humans, which meant all bets were off. Krieg leaned down. Marcus could count his teeth. He didn't want to count his teeth, but they were right there, arranged in rows that suggested evolution had opinions about efficiency. The sniff, when it came, was thorough. Krieg inhaled around Marcus's head, his shoulders, moved around to check his back. It felt like being appraised by a loan officer who was also considering eating you. Marcus held his breath. Not intentionally. His lungs had just decided to stop participating in consciousness. Krieg completed his circuit and returned to face Marcus directly. Then he sat down. Not in a chair. On the floor. Directly in front of Marcus's desk, his massive body positioned between Marcus and the rest of the classroom like a living barricade. The room went silent except for Vorn's humming, which had now reached pitches that only dogs and quantum physicists could hear. Krieg's tail swept once across the floor, then settled. He looked forward, toward the professor, in a posture that clearly communicated, "I am paying attention and also guarding this human." Professor Sithara's eye stalks performed a maneuver that probably wasn't anatomically recommended. "That's... Mr. Krieg, there are empty seats throughout the classroom. You don't need to..." Krieg didn't move. "Right," Sithara said. "Right. Well, let's continue with the lesson, shall we?" Marcus stared at the back of Krieg's head, at the scales that shifted colors like oil on water, at the spines that ran down his neck and probably had some terrifying evolutionary purpose. What, Marcus thought, the hell just happened? The lecture continued. Professor Sithara soldiered through an explanation of symbiotic relationships in low-gravity environments, while a 400-pound apex predator lounged in her classroom like a scaly boulder. Marcus tried to take notes. This was difficult because his hands were shaking and also because Krieg kept adjusting. Every few minutes, the Vrathkul would shift position, resettling himself with movements that somehow managed to be both graceful and thunderous. Each adjustment brought small rumbles, the sound of scales sliding against floor tiles, of a tail repositioning itself across 3 feet of classroom real estate. When Thrace tried to approach Marcus to borrow a stylus, Krieg's head swiveled. Just his head. The rest of him remained still, but his head rotated with the mechanical precision of a security turret. and a low growl emerged from somewhere deep in his chest. Thrace backed away so fast he nearly tripped over his own feet. "Okay," Marcus whispered down at Krieg. "That's not necessary. He just wanted a stylus." Krieg's head rotated back to face forward. The growl stopped. If Marcus didn't know better, he'd say the predator looked satisfied. Class ended with the kind of nervous relief usually reserved for successful bomb defusals. Students gathered their belongings with the speed of people who just remembered important appointments literally anywhere else. Marcus stood. Krieg stood. This was a problem because when Krieg stood, he took up approximately 40% of available space. "So," Marcus said, looking up at the Vrathkul, "thanks for sitting. But I have another class across campus, and I'm pretty sure you're not enrolled in Quantum Mechanics 202. Krieg blinked, all four eyes in sequence. Then he turned and walked toward the door. Marcus exhaled and gathered his things. He made it 3 steps into the hallway before he realized Krieg was matching his pace, walking slightly behind and to the left, in a position that Marcus's hindbrain recognized as flanking guard. "You're following me." Krieg made a sound that might have been agreement or might have been indigestion. It was hard to tell with Vrathkul. The walk across campus became an event. Students parted before them like water before a ship, pressing themselves against walls and ducking into alcoves. A group of Pixin, small, rabbit-like with anxiety disorders that predated their species' industrial revolution, saw them coming and just teleported away. By the time Marcus reached his quantum mechanics class, he had a trailing audience. Not close, no one wanted to be close, but definitely watching. Professor Helms, a human from the Beijing campus, looked up as Marcus entered. Her eyes tracked to Krieg, then back to Marcus, then to Krieg again. "Mr. Webb," she said slowly. "Is that a Vrathkul?" "Yes, ma'am." "Is he enrolled in this class?" "I don't think so, ma'am." "Is he going to eat anyone?" "I really hope not, ma'am." Professor Helms studied Krieg, who had resumed his position on the floor in front of Marcus's chosen seat. "Right. Well, he's quieter than some students I've had. Just make sure he doesn't disrupt the lesson." The day continued in this fashion. Krieg followed Marcus to every class, the cafeteria, and the library. At lunch, Marcus discovered that Krieg had apparently visited the xenobiology lab, because he dropped a deceased, thankfully preserved, specimen of a Keltar rat on Marcus's table, with the air of someone presenting a thoughtful gift. Thank you, but I don't eat these." Krieg tilted his head. Confusion rippled across his features. Marcus pointed at his meal, synthesized protein with vegetables grown in Dome 4's hydroponic gardens. "I eat this. Cooked food. From plants and, okay, also from animals, but not raw animals that used to be lab specimens." Krieg made a huffing sound, picked up the rat and ate it himself. 4 crunches. That was all it took. Marcus pushed his tray away. Suddenly, synthesized protein didn't seem so appetizing. By evening, the university's administration had noticed. Marcus received a message marked urgent from Dean Vossler's office. "Please report to administration immediately regarding your situation." Krieg followed him to the administration building. Dean Vossler was a threen, a species that resembled otters who'd evolved bureaucracy as a defense mechanism. She looked at Marcus, then at Krieg, then pulled up something on her datapad with the expression of someone reviewing their life choices. "Mr. Webb," she said, "do you know why a Vrathkul apex predator has imprinted on you?" "No, ma'am. Do you have any special pheromones or chemical emissions?" "Not that I know of, ma'am." "Have you performed any dominance displays in his presence?" "I sat in a chair, ma'am." Dean Vossler's whiskers twitched. "You sat in a chair?" "Yes, ma'am." She looked at Krieg. "Mr. Krieg, can you explain your behavior?" Krieg rumbled something in his native language. The translator, after a long pause, rendered it as apex, respect, guard. "That's not helpful," Dean Vossler muttered. "Mr. Webb, until we understand this situation, I'm going to have to ask you to keep Mr. Krieg from disrupting other students' education." Marcus looked at Krieg. Krieg looked back with eyes that had probably never experienced doubt. "I'll try, ma'am." The library's xenobiology section occupied 3 floors of Dome 7. Marcus found himself there at midnight, unable to sleep, scrolling through texts on Vrathkul's social behavior, while Krieg dozed near the stacks. The information wasn't encouraging. Vrathkul dominance hierarchies are established through chemical assessment and physical displays. Subordinate individuals show deference to those they perceive as greater predators. This behavior is only exhibited toward species assessed as apex, predators who could theoretically hunt the Vrathkul themselves. Marcus reread that line 3 times. Apex, greater predators. He pulled up Earth's xenobiology file, the one compiled when humanity joined the cooperative. The file was extensive. Most species had entries that ran maybe 20 pages. Earth's ran to 300 with sections marked with warnings ranging from caution, extreme environment, to recommendation, avoid surface visitation. He found the relevant section. Humans, Homo sapiens, persistence predators, evolved on a Class 12 death world. Notable traits include binocular vision, exceptional endurance, pattern recognition capabilities that border on precognition, and social hunting strategies. Humans can track prey across continental distances over periods of days or weeks, a strategy that proves psychologically devastating to pursuit predators and prey species alike. Warning: despite appearing non-threatening by galactic predator standards, no natural armor, no fangs, no venom, humans occupy an apex position in their ecosystem through unconventional means. Their ability to throw objects with lethal accuracy is unmatched in known species. Their endurance permits sustained activity in conditions that would kill most predators through exhaustion. Cultural note: humans domesticated multiple predator species on their home world, including wolves, Canis lupus, large cats, Felidae, and raptors, Accipitridae. This suggests a predisposition toward forming hierarchical bonds with other apex predators. Marcus closed the file and looked at Krieg, who had opened one eye to track his movement. "You think I'm an apex predator?" Marcus said quietly. "That's insane. I'm a graduate student. I eat ramen. I can't even kill spiders without feeling guilty." Krieg's eye closed again. The next morning things got worse, or maybe better. Marcus was still deciding. He walked into xenobiology to find his usual seat occupied. Thrace sat there, arms crossed, smirking. "This spot's taken, human. Find somewhere else." Marcus stopped. Krieg, walking beside him, also stopped. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. "That's my seat," Marcus said. "I've sat there all semester. And now I'm sitting here. What are you going to do about it? Oh wait, you're going to hide behind your pet. How very apex of you." Several students edged toward the exits. "He's not my pet," Marcus said. "And I don't want trouble. Just move." "Make me." Marcus had read about confrontation psychology in mammals, the elevated heartbeat, the adrenaline spike, the way rational thought took a back seat to older, more fundamental reactions. He felt all of this now, his body preparing for a conflict his conscious mind wanted to avoid. He stepped forward. Krieg didn't move, but something changed in his posture, a coiling like a spring compressing. Thrace's smugness faltered. His species had good instincts. They'd evolved on a world with actual predators. Those instincts were now screaming at him. "You know what's interesting?" Marcus said quietly. "Humans don't usually fight for territory. We don't need to. We don't have mating displays or dominance hierarchies like most species." He took another step. "But we do have spite, and persistence, and a really well-developed sense of pettiness." Thrace stood, not because he wanted to, because his body decided that sitting down during a potential threat was tactically unsound. "If you don't move," Marcus continued, "I will sit on the floor in front of that seat for the entire semester, and Krieg will sit with me, and you will have to explain to everyone why you are afraid to sit in front of a graduate student who eats cereal for dinner." Silence. Thrace moved. Marcus sat down. His hands were shaking. Krieg resumed his position on the floor, and Marcus could swear the Vrathkul was pleased. Professor Zithara entered, took one look at the room's energy, and decided not to ask. After class, Pip approached Marcus. the first classmate to do so voluntarily since Krieg's arrival. The little Ressie chittered nervously. "Marcus, can I ask you something?" "Sure. What do you smell like to predators, I mean?" Marcus blinked. "I have no idea. Like a human?" "No, but—" Pip's whiskers twitched. "I was talking to my dorm mate who's a Kelvy. They're meso-predators, mid-tier hunters. And she said she smells humans sometimes in the cafeteria. She said you smell like every predator's nightmare had a nightmare." "That's poetic." "She said humans smell like the thing that chased their ancestors until their ancestors' hearts exploded. Like patient death. Like something that will never, ever stop coming." Marcus thought about persistence hunting. About humans jogging after deer for 6 hours until the deer died of exhaustion. About how his species had literally walked prey to death, following tracks for days, for weeks, until the animal simply gave up. "Oh," he said. "That makes sense, actually." Pip chittered. "That's terrifying." "Yeah," Marcus agreed. "Yeah, it really is." Dr. Shella Kaur arrived on campus 3 days later. The visiting xenobiologist was a creche, a species that looked like praying mantises who'd discovered business casual. She'd written the definitive text on interspecies predator dynamics, and Dean Vossler had called her in to explain why a Vrathkul was following a human around like a loyal guard dog. They met in Dean Vossler's office, Marcus, Krieg, Dr. Kaur, and the dean herself, who looked like she'd aged 10 years in 3 days. "Mr. Webb," Dr. Kaur began, clicking her mandibles thoughtfully. "Has anyone explained to you what a persistence predator is?" "I've read about it," Marcus said. "Reading and understanding are different. Let me explain what your species represents to the galactic community." She pulled up a holographic display. Most predators, Vrathkul included, are pursuit predators or ambush predators. They rely on speed, strength, or stealth to capture prey quickly. They must because predation is metabolically expensive. The display showed a Vrathkul hunting something that looked like a space elk. The hunt lasted 30 seconds. Sprint, pounce, kill. Now observe persistence hunting. The display changed. It showed a human, not Marcus, but some anthropologist's footage from Earth's savanna. The human was jogging, not sprinting, jogging. Behind them, a gazelle ran in terror. The footage continued, and continued, and continued. The gazelle would run, then stop, exhausted. The human would keep jogging. The gazelle would run again, stop again. The human never stopped. After 40 minutes, the gazelle collapsed. Heat exhaustion, system failure, death by sheer stamina. The human walked up to it with a spear. "This," Dr. Kaur said, "is what you smell like to predators. You smell like you will never stop. You smell like the death that jogs. Vrathkul are apex predators on their world, but even they have limits. They can sprint for 3 minutes before they overheat. Humans can run for hours." Krieg made a rumbling sound. The translator rendered it as respect, fear, wise. "Mr. Krieg recognizes Mr. Webb as a greater predator," Dr. Kaur continued. "Not because humans are stronger or faster, but because humans are inevitable. In Vrathkul culture, forming alliances with greater predators is a sign of intelligence. He's not subordinate to you, Mr. Webb. He views you as a valuable partner." "But I don't hunt," Marcus protested. "I'm a grad student. I hunt for decent coffee and affordable textbooks." "Your instincts hunt," Dr. Kaur said. "Your body chemistry, your pheromones, they all carry the signature of a persistence predator. You also have binocular vision, which means you've evolved to track and target. You have hands capable of throwing projectiles with accuracy that still confounds our physicists. And you have pattern recognition skills that allow you to follow tracks, predict behavior, and plan ambushes." She pulled up another image, a human brain scan highlighting the prefrontal cortex. "You're also a social hunter. Humans coordinate in groups, communicate complex strategies, and use tools. To predator species, this is terrifying. You're not just a threat individually, you're a threat collectively. 1 human is concerning. 10 humans working together are an extinction event." Marcus looked at Krieg. "Is that true? Is that why you sat in front of me?" Krieg stood and moved to face Marcus directly. When he spoke, the translator's voice was unusually clear. You are the hunter who does not tire, the pack coordinator, the thrower of death. Your species survived your world not through armor or venom, but through will. In you, I see the greatest predator, not the strongest but the most certain. To ally with you is wisdom. To oppose you is to wait for inevitable defeat. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me, Marcus said weakly. Also the most terrifying. The alarm sounded before anyone could respond. Containment breach, xenobiology wing. All personnel evacuate. Repeat, containment breach. Dean Vossler's face went pale. What specimen? A voice crackled over the comm. It's the shrike worm. It's out of containment and moving toward the populated domes. Dr. Kor's mandibles clicked rapidly, the Kresh equivalent of cursing. A shrike worm? Those are Class 9 predators. They're armored, venomous, and territorial. If it reaches the student domes, security is responding, Dean Vossler said, but her voice lacked confidence. Marcus stood. What's a shrike worm's hunting pattern? Everyone looked at him. What's its hunting pattern? He repeated. Is it pursuit, ambush, or territorial? Territorial, Dr. Kor said. It's claiming the xenobiology wing as its domain and will attack anyone who enters. Security can't get close without. Then we draw it out, Marcus said. Away from students, toward an area we can contain it. We? Dean Vossler's whiskers stood on end. Marcus looked at Krieg. You're a pursuit predator. Fast, strong, good at direct confrontation. I'm a persistence predator. Good at strategy, coordination, and being annoying until something makes a mistake. Together? Krieg's mandibles parted in what might have been a smile. Together, apex. This is insane, Dean Vossler said. Yeah, Marcus agreed. But it's also necessary. Dr. Kor, can you coordinate with security? Tell them to set up a containment field in Dome 7's cargo bay. We'll drive it there. How? Marcus smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a species that had once hunted mammoth not with strength, but with patience and sharp sticks. We're going to piss it off and make it chase us. The shrike worm was 12 feet of armored nightmare. It looked like someone had crossbred a Komodo dragon with a porcupine and given the result anger management issues. Marcus and Krieg found it in the xenobiology lab, destroying equipment with its spiked tail. Hey, Marcus shouted. Over here, ugly. The shrike worm's head swiveled. Multiple eyes focused on Marcus. That's right, Marcus said. I'm in your territory. What are you going to do about it? The shrike worm charged. Marcus ran. Not a sprint, a steady, sustainable jog. Behind him he heard the creature's claws scraping against floor tiles, heard its hissing breath. Krieg flanked from the side, snapping at the creature's legs, drawing its attention briefly before darting away. The Vrathkul was fast, faster than Marcus, but he paced himself to Marcus's speed, working in coordination. They led it through the corridors. When it got too close, Krieg would engage, using his bulk to check its advance. When Krieg needed recovery, Marcus would throw equipment, lab tools, anything to keep the creature's attention. It was pursuit and persistence working in tandem. The shrike worm, territorial and aggressive, couldn't ignore the provocation. It had to chase, had to attack. They reached the cargo bay. Security had set up the containment field, a shimmering barrier of force at the far end of the space. Now we just have to get past it, Marcus panted. Trust, Krieg rumbled. They ran toward the shrike worm, straight at it, in a move that violated every instinct except the ones that had made humans successful hunters for 200,000 years. At the last second, they split. Marcus rolled left, Krieg dove right. The shrike worm, committed to its charge, couldn't adjust. It hit the containment field and collapsed, stunned by the energy barrier. Security moved in with specialized equipment, securing the creature for transport back to its proper containment. Marcus sat on the floor, breathing hard. Krieg sat next to him, equally exhausted. Good hunt, Krieg said. Terrible hunt, Marcus corrected, but effective. Same thing. Marcus laughed. He couldn't help it. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by the slightly manic energy of someone who'd just done something incredibly stupid and survived. "I guess we make a good team," Marcus said. "Apex, Apex," Krieg agreed. The video went viral. Someone's security feed had captured the entire incident. Marcus and Krieg working in perfect coordination, leading a Class 9 predator through a carefully executed plan. The cooperative news network ran it with the headline, "Death World Human and Vrathkul Apex Form Unlikely Alliance." Marcus tried to ignore it. This was difficult because students kept stopping him in the hallways to ask for selfies. The university administration, after a lengthy meeting that Marcus wasn't invited to, officially recognized him and Krieg as a cross-species research partnership. This came with funding, lab access, and a formal project requirement. Their project, studying cooperative hunting strategies between different predator classifications. Professor Sithara seemed relieved to have an explanation for Krieg's presence in her classroom. She even started directing questions to both of them, creating a strange dynamic where Marcus would explain the theoretical framework and Krieg would provide practical predator perspectives. "The thing about ambush predators," Krieg explained one day through his translator, "is patience. We wait for the perfect moment. Humans have patience, but they use it differently, to outlast rather than to wait." "Complementary strategies," Marcus added. "If you combine them, you get a hunting partnership that's adaptable to different prey and conditions." The other students gradually adjusted. Pip stopped fainting when Krieg moved suddenly. Vorn's humming decreased to manageable frequencies. Even Thrace begrudgingly admitted that the containment breach response had been adequate. Selly still teleported occasionally, but that was just her nature. Marcus found himself enjoying the partnership. Krieg had a dry sense of humor once you got past the terrifying predator exterior. He made observations about alien species that were often insightful and occasionally hilarious. "Pip is prey-shaped," Krieg noted one day in the cafeteria, "but also friend-shaped. This is confusing to my instincts." "Welcome to being a social species," Marcus said. "Everything is friend-shaped if you try hard enough." 3 weeks after the containment breach, the classroom door opened to reveal another new transfer student. This one was a Keltar, a mesopredator species, somewhere between Vrathkul and housecat in the galactic threat assessment. They looked like ferrets designed by committee with too many teeth and not enough impulse control. The Keltar, whose name was Sheik, entered the classroom and immediately began the dominance assessment. They sniffed their way through the students with the enthusiasm of someone who'd just discovered a buffet. When they reached Krieg, they paused, sniffed extensively, made a considering sound. Then they sniffed Marcus. There was a long moment of silence. Sheik sat down. Not in front of Marcus, that spot was taken, but next to Krieg, forming a secondary guard position. "Oh, come on," Marcus said. Krieg made a rumbling sound that the translator rendered as, "Apex recognized. This is correct." "I'm not an Apex. I'm a graduate student with student loans and a caffeine dependency." "Apex, Apex," Krieg insisted. Sheik agrees. Sheik chittered something that translated as, "Smell like the patient death. Smell like the hunt that never ends. Good to ally with. Wise to respect." Marcus looked at Professor Zithara, silently pleading for intervention. The professor's eye stalks performed what might have been a shrug. "Mr. Webb, perhaps you should accept your role. You are, whether you like it or not, from a death world. Your species earned their position in the galactic community not through strength or technology, but through sheer stubborn persistence. You are proof that the most dangerous predator isn't the strongest or fastest. It's the one that never gives up." "That's a nice speech," Marcus said. "But now I have 2 apex predators following me around campus." "3, said a voice from the doorway. Everyone turned. A Vexari stood there, a species that looked like someone had given a wolf opposable thumbs and an existential crisis. They were known for pack hunting and collective intelligence. The Vexari sniffed the air, focused on Marcus, and sat down next to Sheik. "Okay," Marcus said to the universe in general. "This is happening." Krieg rumbled contentedly. "Pack grows. This is good. Apex leads pack. I don't want to lead a pack. I want to finish my degree in peace." Peace is boring, Sheik chittered. Pack hunts are fun. The Vexari, whose translator ID'd them as Fen, added, human-led packs historically successful. Wolves joined humans 12,000 years ago, still beneficial partnership. That's different. Those were Earth wolves, not alien apex predators. Principle same, Fen said. Humans make good pack leaders. Patient, strategic, never quit. Marcus looked at his growing collection of predators and realized something. This was his life now. He was a human at an interstellar university, somehow accidentally collecting apex predators like they were Pokemon. Fine, he said, but you're all taking turns carrying my books between classes. Krieg rumbled approval. Sheik chittered happily. Fen's tail wagged. Professor Zithara began the day's lecture on symbiotic relationships, and Marcus reflected on the irony. He'd come to the Galactic Academy to study xenobiology, to understand how different species interacted, competed, and cooperated. Instead, he'd become the case study. The human from the death world, surrounded by predators, leading a pack he never wanted but somehow fit perfectly. That night, in his dorm room, which was starting to feel crowded with 3 apex predators who insisted on guard rotation, Marcus updated his journal. Day 47 at the Academy. Have accidentally formed a multi-species predator pack. This was not in the course catalog. Krieg brought me another dead lab specimen today. I've explained 3 times that humans cook their food, but I think he's testing my commitment to being an apex predator. Sheik keeps trying to groom my hair, which would be endearing if they didn't have venomous saliva. Fen has been teaching me Vexari pack coordination signals, which mostly involve ear positions I don't have. Dr. Kaur says this is an unprecedented opportunity for cross-species behavioral research. Dean Vossler says this is a liability nightmare. I say it's Tuesday. The weird thing is, I'm starting to understand what they see. Not the apex predator thing. I still can't reconcile that with my identity as someone who apologizes to furniture when I bump into it. But the partnership aspect. The way Krieg thinks in terms of immediate threats and direct action. The way Sheik notices things I miss. Small environmental details that predators track instinctively. The way Fen coordinates group movement with an efficiency that makes our study groups look like chaos. We're not the same. We're not even close. But we complement each other in ways that make the sum greater than the parts. Also, I'm pretty sure I'm going to ace my xenobiology final because I have 3 living, breathing study guides who can explain predator psychology from personal experience. Mom was right. College really is about finding your people. She just probably didn't expect my people to have fangs. Marcus closed his journal and looked at his roommates. Krieg was sleeping in the corner, his massive form somehow fitting into a space that shouldn't have accommodated him. Sheik was curled on the desk chair, chittering softly in their sleep. Fen was by the door, on watch, ears rotating to track sounds in the hallway. His communicator buzzed. A message from Professor Zithara. Mr. Webb, I'm forwarding you an invitation. The Cooperative Science Council is hosting a symposium on unconventional predator alliances next semester. They've requested you and your pack as keynote presenters. This is quite an honor for a graduate student. Please confirm your attendance. Marcus read the message twice. A symposium. Keynote presentation. Him and his accidental pack of apex predators, explaining to the galaxy's scientific community how a human from Earth ended up coordinating with species that should have been competing for dominance. He looked at his pack again. At Krieg, who'd sat in front of him that first day because he recognized something in Marcus that Marcus himself hadn't fully understood. At Sheik, who'd joined because predators understood the value of strong alliances. At Fen, who'd completed the pack because wolves, Earth wolves, alien wolves, all wolves, knew a good leader when they smelled one. Confirm attendance, he typed back. But I'm going to need a bigger presentation space. Outside his window, Nexus Station rotated slowly through the stars. Somewhere in those stars was Earth, the death world that had produced a species of persistence predators who'd learned to cook their food, write poetry, and build spacecrafts. Who'd looked at the wolves stalking their ancestors and thought, what if we were friends instead? Who'd reached the stars and discovered that the instincts that made them successful on Earth, the patience, The pattern recognition, the stubborn refusal to quit, made them something unique in the galactic community. Not conquerors, not warriors, but the species that even apex predators wanted as allies. Marcus smiled and settled into his bed. Tomorrow he'd have to explain to Krieg that bringing deceased lab specimens was really not necessary. He'd have to convince Sheik that human hair shouldn't be groomed with venomous saliva. He'd have to practice pack coordination signals with Fen for their afternoon study session. Tomorrow he'd continue being a human at an interstellar university, leading a pack he never asked for but couldn't imagine being without. But tonight, surrounded by predators who'd chosen to follow the persistent hunter from Earth, Marcus Webb slept soundly. After all, the most dangerous thing in any ecosystem isn't the creature with the biggest teeth or the strongest armor. It's the one that never ever stops. And everyone in the pack knew it.